morning, everybody. How do you follow a professor and an industry expert with a lispy Mancunian with 10 months experience in the waste industry? But hopefully the freshness of looking at the waste industry, I can give a different perspective. So the purpose of this presentation is to really give our perspective on the current situation in the waste industry, really how we've got to where we are today, but more importantly, what we need to focus on in the future to drive a more circular and brighter future for the waste and resource recovery industry. I've got a brief presentation, a couple of videos, and then obviously a Q&A at the end, so if you do have any questions, I'll be happy to take them for you. So if we start with the macroeconomic context, we've had 25 years of economic growth in Australia. So it's defied business cycles. There's very few countries in the world that have actually not had a recession for 25 years. So life has been pretty good in Australia. However, what that has meant is a lack of investment in some of the manufacturing industries because it's been cheaper to import products from overseas. Car industries, glass bottle production have gone offshore, and other industries continue to decline because there haven't been that investment on the country of Australia. There's been a short-termism view because of those manufacturing costs and labour costs going skywards, and that short-termism has really led to a linear approach to waste, because it is waste when it's going into landfill, and really a lack of a circular approach to resource recovery. So what are the consequences of that? So glass has been mentioned many times. We've got the glass mountains on there. The cheap imports need to be dealt with one way or the other, and we need to find a domestic market for glass, which I'll talk about later. The short-termism approach has really led to poor behaviour and poor practices in the industry as well. We're seeing 1 million tonnes, rough, depending on which figures you believe, of waste going from New South Wales to Queensland. That is purely profit motivated. There's nothing good coming out of that for the waste industry apart from bringing us all down together. And there has been limited investment in recycling facilities and a lack of incentives to invest in the resource recovery and recycling industry, which means when you get a shock, like China SUEZ, the recycling facilities that are still economically viable are not dynamic enough and they're not technologically advanced enough to react quickly to those shocks. So we find that we have this challenge to move quickly and react and help ourselves out. Now with the China SUEZ and the other media attention, we've actually got a double-edged sword. Okay? So yes, the industry has taken a few punches over the last few months, I would say. There's been some pretty unpleasant coverage. However, it is a fantastic opportunity for us to get our message across as an industry. We have never had so much share of voice, so many news articles, TV shows, radio broadcasts, and the number of column inches that we have. We've got such a wonderful opportunity to get a consistent message out there, as Costa and Peter said yesterday. We need to continue to expose the rogue operators in the industry and get them dealt with effectively. And we need to put pressure on federal and state government to support and fund innovation. But most importantly, we need to use the media to help educate the masses on source separation and contamination and what constitutes contamination, so we can get those out the recycling bins and improve the quality of the recyclable product, which will only help us both with export markets as they exist and with our domestic journey to do more with recyclables. So what does the future hold? So if I actually knew that, I'd have probably bought a lottery ticket a few years ago, and I'd be sipping pina coladas now on a plastic-free beach. But I don't know what the future holds. Yes, it will involve disruption, whether that be digitisation, Uberisation, blockchain, more sharing economies. All of those things will happen to us. As an industry, are we prepared for the disruptions? China sword would probably say, no, we're not. So we need to keep looking further afield and looking at the innovations and disruptions that are set to actually cause us a bit of unrest. But which ones are going to work, I don't know. So I'm not going to stand here today and tell you what innovations are going to drive the industry forward. I'm going to focus on a few highlights or a few things that we could do in the very near-term future to deal with the aforementioned problems that I've already raised. So glass, I'm going to echo quite a few of the comments. Stan's just mentioned it. Presenters yesterday have mentioned it. We need to play to our strengths, Australia, right? One thing we do have is net positive migration into this country. We've got population growth, we've got booming growth in capital cities. If you go to any capital city in Australia, you'll see lots of cranes, you'll see road projects being done, tunnels being done, you'll see lots of construction. We know that glass is infinitely recyclable, and we also know when it's crushed down, it makes a good composite material for construction of roads. So let's just mandate it and get it done and get rid of the stockpiles and stop talking about it. The Kiwis are even doing this. So I've got a small video which will show a little bit of innovation that one of the New Zealand beverage manufacturers have put in place, promoting beer drinking, which is probably one of my favourite, if not my favourite pastime ever, coming from Manchester. So I'll just play this and see what you think. So a bit of a gimmicky video. It could be the next reverse vending machine, who knows? But what it shows is that the power of marketing to get a message across is very powerful. And we need to use marketing both from the industry perspective, we need to fund it from a state government and federal government perspective to actually educate people. It's not hard, we've just got to do it and we've got to put the money behind it. I think Mike Ritchie said $30 million is needed to help educate people, the public, to source, separate and reduce contamination. I've got an idea on how we can do that, which I'll get into in just a minute. So another thing we have to do is fundamentally implement a comprehensive national approach to waste management. It's absolutely clear that our communities and our customers' expectations have changed. They are looking for other ways to manage their waste and turn it into a resource rather than sticking it into landfill. At SUEZ, we operate a multitude of resource recovery facilities across the country, but in each state it's very, very different, and this is evident by landfill performance in different jurisdictions. The best performing at 80% diversion, the worst down at around 28%, again showing the education is lacking in some areas. We have seen that effective implementation of levies drives investment in resource recovery facilities, ranging from process engineered fuel, which we have in South Australia with our partner ResourceCo, or soil processing facilities, which we're investing in Victoria. What's clear, though, is that large-scale resource recovery projects need stable planning and a stable regulatory environment, appropriate waste levy settings, and, of course, the supply and demand for the recycled products. We've got to get better alignment. I think Peter said we've got to get in step, and I completely agree. So if we want to ensure that waste is turned into a resource, we need to continue to push for the harmonisation of waste levies and end the unnecessary interstate transport of waste. And while we're at it, if we're not getting 1 million tonnes worth of levy in New South Wales for that waste, and we're going to get it, why don't we use, rough, my maths has always been a bit shit, but $138 million worth? That will certainly cover Mike's 30 million with a bit to share amongst other councils, and give the councils that money to put into an education and marketing programs so that we can help educate the masses. It seems like common sense to an outsider coming in. Maybe I'm a bit naive, and I'm certainly open to being educated in the breaks if anyone would like to. We also need to keep pulling for better design and the eco-design of products. We've been talking about that over the last couple of days. We need to start planning for the future. The products that are being created, we've got to start putting pressure on the manufacturers to actually design long-term products that when they are at the end of their useful economic life, they can be recycled easily. We can learn from our colleagues abroad. So the Germans and the German efficiency, we see their motor cars outperforming most around the world, but we can also look at their practices. So Germany has one of the best recycling systems in the world. The waste hierarchy is at the foundation of their waste management policies. Waste is strictly source separated into separate containers, and if you do have contamination in your bin, the waste contractor can refuse to pick up your bins, which is quite novel. We should start to do that, and I saw in one of the outbreak sessions yesterday, a couple of councils were actually at least putting notices and stickers on the bins as warnings and letters are going out. We need to do more of that. Under the Waste Management Act of 2015, the segregation and collection of the various waste streams of paper, glass, plastic and household organic waste is mandatory. The Germans can make it mandatory, why can't we? They have the Green Dot programme, which proactively encourages recycling. Any product with a green dot in Germany and more broadly in Europe means it can be fully recycled. Product responsibility and product stewardship is at the heart of the waste management policy. Stan has also said we don't have manufacturers in the room, we don't have grocery retailers in the room that also have a lot to say in packaging. I'm at the Australian Food and Grocery Council later this month, and certainly we'll start those discussions as well. The Green Dot's intention is to encourage consumers to purchase items with the symbol and dispose of it at specific facilities, and ultimately it reduces packaging waste and increases recycling rates. Since its induction in 1991, there's been a significant decrease in the volume of consumer packaging, and it was very good to hear Brooke Donnelly yesterday from APCO talking about what they are trying to do there. I would just encourage more haste and more urgency to get that implemented. So what are we going to do when that's in place and we've got all this recycled packaging? Well, we need to start putting it into products. Coca-Cola are already using 25% recycled plastics in their bottles, and they're committed to go to 50% in the EU by 2020. California has introduced legislation to put 25% of post-consumer recycled content in packaging. Again, it's great to see the environment ministers saying that they're going to do that by 2025 or earlier. I've underlined earlier in my speaker's notes, I would really like to see that happening earlier. We fully support it, but believe that 7 years is probably too far away. We've got a video now, it's happening today. This is another European example. I think we do need to learn quicker and implement processes and practices from our European colleagues quicker. So this is a great example of collaboration, innovation and community spirit coming together to turn beach plastic into a shampoo bottle.
Every year, around 8 million tons of plastic finds its way into the ocean. And a lot of that plastic ends up on our beaches too. It's time to change. As the world's #1 shampoo, we use plastic in our bottles. But now we're beginning to get plastic from a new source in France. Over 100 NGOs and 1,000 volunteers have been collecting it from beaches and handing it to our innovative recycling partners at TerraCycle and SUEZ, who turn it into pellets, which we turn into shampoo bottles. Like this. We've created the world's first recyclable shampoo bottle made with beach plastic. And we're starting with a production run of 170,000 bottles in France. And we're hoping to extend this to millions of bottles around the world because we want to reduce our environmental impact. And we think our beaches and oceans are no place for plastic. Let's take the world's most worthless waste and turn it into something valuable. Sign up for beach cleanups to help us build the next bottle.
So it's already been done, and I think we can just start cracking on with it here, if you ask me. Finally, waste to energy. It's been discussed a fair bit through the conference. SUEZ runs 70 waste to energy plants across the world. It is going to happen. It needs to happen. It's the missing link in the waste management hierarchy and waste infrastructure in Australia. After reduction, after reuse, and after recycling, there is a crucial element to recover the calorific value of waste streams that would otherwise go into landfill. It is the norm in Europe. However, we have probably approached it quite poorly in Australia, not getting the communities on board and involving them in the decisions, and not getting over the negative perceptions. I asked Mark, when putting this presentation together, you know, how bad are energy to waste plants? He said a good high-spec energy to waste plant will produce less harmful CO2 emissions in 365 days of operation than one night of Sydney's New Year's fireworks. So when you think of it like that, no one's got a problem blowing up a shitload of cash on New Year's Eve to have a bit of fun and not think about the consequences. So we need to use metaphors to help educate. So in summary, how are we going to do it? Australia has got to take control of its own destiny, and we've got to do it quickly, not in 7 years. Collaboration is absolutely key. We've got to get all those stakeholders round a table, and we've got to get them talking, and we need to pick off individual problems and deal with them one by one and get traction and momentum so that we can win back the trust of the general public. They say necessity is the mother of invention. Well, here's a newsflash for you. She's here. So let's get on with it, let's mandate it, and let's get it done. Any questions?